Okay, everyone. Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to this virtual event. This is our Playshop, our very first Playshop here during the AAEEBL annual meeting, and we're really pleased to have you all here. My colleagues Candyce Reynolds and Sonja Taylor from Portland State University are going to take us on this wild ride, and so really happy to have you both here, and I will go ahead and turn it over to you both. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad you're here, and we were at the original conference. We were going to do an Ignite session and a workshop actually on making your own portfolio. And for the Ignite session, we had thought that we would call it, "If you build it, you can teach it." So that's the title of what our presentation is going to be today. We have several goals for this play session, but we're not going to burden you with learning a ton. We have an hour together, and we want to make sure that it's used wisely and that you go away with something that you can use later. So one of the things that Sonja and I and many of our colleagues have discovered is that it's very important to discover the purpose of your ePortfolio. And to recognize that there are many ways to build a portfolio, and there are also many purposes for a portfolio. Oftentimes when we do it with our students, we have really clear learning objectives for our students, what we want them to learn through doing a portfolio. And the reality is, for us as professional portfolios, we have a lot more leeway. And so thinking about those things I think is important. What are our purposes for this? And so today we're going to hopefully help you decide on one of your purposes for an ePortfolio, professional ePortfolio today, and take that idea for a spin. Now we'll do some introductions.
Am I going first?
Yes, you are going first, Sonja.
So I've been at Portland State University for, I think, going on 23 years. And I like to say that I moved departments rather than schools, because I started in biology and then went to conflict resolution and ended in sociology. So I'm really interested in interdisciplinary learning. And I teach in a dual credit program where we give seniors in high school a first-year seminar experience, and it's taught by a faculty team of one professor from PSU and 2 high school faculty. And then I also am the director of that program. So I'm thinking about portfolio on a lot of levels for my students. And I also teach a sophomore level class where I do ePortfolio as well. But for my students, as they can grow and process and reflection and have reflection on their learning, but also for the faculty that work in my program, and to showcase what goes on in our program as a whole, and then for my own personal use.
Great. And I am Candyce Reynolds, and I'm also at Portland State University, and I've actually been in many departments too there. But right now I am in educational leadership and policy with a focus on adult education. In my previous life at the university, I was in the general education program that Sonja teaches in now. And in that program, we require our students in the first year program to have an ePortfolio. We actually started using ePortfolios in 1998, which is crazy when I think back how long ago it's been that we were using ePortfolios. The program that I teach in and work in now, we also require it as our kind of exit culminating project for our master's program in post-secondary adult and continuing education. I have had, I think I counted a couple of months ago, I think I have 53 ePortfolios. So you can imagine there are many purposes, and partly that's because I like to try out different platforms. But really, I've had a hard time figuring out who my audience is. And so I've created lots of different ones based on different audiences. And I think Sonja and I have had a different take on what we do with our professional portfolios. So I hope you'll find that interesting, the different take, and it will inspire you to think about your own purposes. And we really do strongly believe that if you build a portfolio, you can actually teach a portfolio well. I remember the first time that I was challenged by a colleague, Wendy Garrison, who said, "Do you have your ePortfolio?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't actually have one." And, you know, actually starting to build one, realizing that the things we were asking to do students were really hard. And they were multifaceted and difficult to maneuver and figure out what the next steps were and what I was learning and why I was doing what I was doing. So for me, and I think Sonja also, it's really important that we have that experience of building our own portfolio so we know what that experience is like for our students. And the other thing that Sonja and I want to really push is if you build it, you will learn and grow.
Yeah.
Learn a lot about yourselves.
I would add also, Candice, when you, like you said, the realization that you had about how if what we're asking students to do is actually really hard. And I think that I encounter that with my faculty. If they don't do an ePortfolio and they don't practice it, they don't value it. And they just think it's very easy and this like kind of add-on thing, and they don't get that it's actually really deep and often a transformational process. And then the students miss out because of that. So.
Right, then it does become a superficial project.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. So we're going to launch into this and actually have you go into the breakout rooms and talk about these things. If you are able and willing, let's see, they can't push the Google Doc for the breakout room, can they? No, okay.
I just was realizing that we got to put it in the chat.
Yeah, so I will put it in the chat when we put, actually, Sonja, would you mind putting it in the chat for this one? And then I will get you set up into some breakout rooms, and we'll be there for about 3 to 4 minutes. And if you could answer these questions. So just introduce yourself. Do you have a portfolio? How do you use that portfolio? Do you require one for your work with students at this point? What are your goals for that portfolio? And if you don't have a portfolio, what would you like to do? You know, why are you here? What do you want to learn about? And so we will go ahead and I will get you hopefully into a breakout room. Can I do that? I don't know that I can. Tracy, are you there?
I am, and I can definitely.
Yeah, it doesn't look like I have the control to do. As a co-host, I don't know that I can put people in breakout rooms.
And I am now looking for it too, because I'm not seeing it in mine either.
Should be in that more section, I think.
Yeah, I'm not seeing a more. Hang on. Don't worry. I'm sure I can find it.
Maybe if I stop sharing, maybe that.
Yeah, you can give that try. That would be awesome.
And then I can go to participants, maybe. No, I don't have the.
And I don't have, you know what? I maybe didn't enable it when I created the meeting. Shoot. But I think we can still use the Google Doc and have everybody go in and populate the Google Doc, and then we can see what different people, and then maybe we can have some folks share out.
Yeah.
That sounds like a great idea. So the questions, let me go back. I'll share the screen again so you can actually see the questions, or you can find them in chat if you want to download the doc. Either way. So I will give you let's see, 3 minutes. Just make it perfectly good time, an even time, 12:15. We'll come back.
Oh, I'm going to change the access. Everybody should be able to access it now.
Thank you, Sonja.
You're welcome.
Okay.
So some people are still having trouble accessing the doc, I think. So an option could be to put it in the chat. If you like, you could answer the questions in the chat.
True, and those who are having a hard time can just refresh their browser window on the Google page and they will see a change in how they're able to access that document.
Thank you, Kevin. Why don't we go ahead and just quickly if we could all introduce ourselves. It'd be fun to know who's here and where you're from. I'm going to call on John because I can see John.
Is that right? Sorry. Okay. So I'm John Turner. I'm associate professor of music at High Point University in North Carolina. And do you want me to keep going with these questions or to keep typing? Or
no, just go. Let's just do quick introductions and then.
Okay.
I'd love you to share later, though. Should I call on people? I'll just call on people. Terry, who are you? No, unmute yourself.
Oh, that. I know it, and I always forget to do it. I'm here. Just, I don't have a portfolio.
What?
I know. Shockaroony. I don't.
You will want to start one after today.
I am going to start one after today.
Yeah, I feel like the goal for the session should be that you have an ePortfolio.
Okay. Not by the end of the session though, but by the end of the month.
Great.
I came to learn.
Wonderful. Julie? Yeah.
Hi, Candice. Yeah, I'm Julie Ambrose. I teach for Bloomsburg University in Pennsylvania. I teach juniors and seniors who all transferred into the program after completing an associate's degree in some other field. We don't currently use portfolios in the program, but I'm thinking that it would be a good idea. I used to work at a community college where I was the ePortfolio program director. But I left that position almost, I guess, 5 years ago. So I haven't been in the mix with this organization in much of that time. But I love you folks. I love this organization. The way this is starting out is going to be fine. Everybody's going to get good information today. And I look forward to hearing what everyone has to say.
Thank you. How about Stephen?
Yeah, I'm Steve Bookman. I teach at Pace University in New York City, and I use ePortfolios all the time and with my students as well for freshmen, graduate students, all my students.
Great. Helen.
So, hi everyone. I'm Helen Chen. I'm at Stanford University. We've been using portfolios both with undergraduate and graduate students to help them develop a professional digital presence. I'm so intrigued by what Sonja and Candice are doing because it really aligns with some of our work in the Portfolio to Professional program, and also our work with collaborating with colleagues over in the program in writing and rhetoric. I will say that, you know, we not only help, you know, for example, our grad students create professional portfolios, but also are focusing on LinkedIn as a type of professional portfolio as well. But I think many of the same principles that apply and the value of the process in terms of learning, you know, learning from the process, which is exactly what Candice and Sonja started with, is something that really resonates with us as well. So I'm really looking forward to learning from them today.
That's great. Kevin?
Hi, everybody. I'm a lecturer faculty member at San Francisco State, and I ask my students to use ePortfolios every semester, but the one that I created as a model for them is dusty, is a nice way to put it. I created it several years back, and I am so excited that we're afforded this opportunity to kind of think back on how we can grow ourselves. I think for professional purposes, ePortfolios can serve a lot of functions. And when I was managing a team of 30, I was right on the cusp of getting approval to have ePortfolios be part of the annual review process. Because I think having artifacts that show what we've done over the course of a year is much better than a form with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Likert scales. So excited to be here, and thanks for doing this.
That's great. Yeah, Sonja can talk about the annual review piece when she shows her ePortfolio. Samantha.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Samantha Blevins. I'm at Radford University. I do have a portfolio. I have several portfolios. I'm like Candice. There must be a support group for us somewhere. Oh, it's Amy. But I started it as a student, and I transitioned it to a more professional type of place for me to showcase my work and reflecting on that work and how it relates to other aspects of my life. After I had a conversation with Helen Barrett, because she told me to, and you don't argue with Helen. So I work in a support role at my university. So I support our faculty in their use of ePortfolios with our students. I always encourage our faculty to create one. My biggest win is when they do. I feel like that's a breakthrough when the faculty really buy into it and create one, and then they really do value it more and understand that it has to be incorporated into a course or a program, and it can't just be bolted on.
And then Jan, who's next in the boxes? Anybody can go. Free for all. Okay.
Call on Elise. She's always at the ready.
Okay, there's Elise.
Calling me out. Hi, I'm Elise Hellum. I work at the University of Puget Sound as the ePortfolio program manager. So actually I'm in ePortfolios all day, every day. But the calling out of practicing what you preach is something that really hit home for me as well. So I started my professional portfolio. It's really more of an introductory portfolio. When I first began my role at Puget Sound, talking about like my pedagogical approaches, my experience in the classroom, I felt like I really wanted to introduce myself to students and faculty and staff that I was working with so they knew kind of where I was coming from. So that's sort of the picture I paint in that portfolio. But in my work with first-year students especially, I talked about kind of taking moments along the way to reflect. So I have pages in that portfolio that I just split because I wanted it to be its own portfolio. I have now a process portfolio where I take experiences along my journey and I take a moment to just sort of say, okay, what did I do? What did I learn? And that portfolio, that process space is actually private, but my introductory one is more public. So I'm trying to do both ends. So.
Okay. You know what? I think because of time, I'm going to say, let's go ahead and move forward. And then I'm going to call on the other people that didn't get to talk for the next part because we won't be able to go to the breakout rooms again, okay? So we'll get a chance to have an introduction, but you'll also get to share your ideas in our next activity. Does that sound okay? Sorry if it doesn't. So let me go back. So we just thought we'd show briefly our ePortfolios, and the bullet points that are here are the things that we're going to ask you to do in a little bit. And I will turn it over to Sonja.
Okay, I'm trying to get rid of my tabs, so I apologize, there's still too many up. It slows everything down.
Oh yes, you and I both have lots of tabs.
Mm-hmm. I don't know why it doesn't want to come up, but I can just go to my portfolio. So the slide has, I don't have the bullet points in front of me, Candice, so okay. I think there's going to be some audience and different goals, different purposes. I've been working on this is my public portfolio. So I have a short, it's long because I use PebblePad, but I have a short link to it that's just bit.ly/nomadicacademicpdx. And I've tried to use it for everything. So I just went in and revised with that as my purpose. And so there's little 4-year-old me. And I talk about myself and my goals. And then this is a quote from my older son. And then I have this bit about social media and digital citizenship, because I also, Candice and I have been working on like folio thinking as a precursor to ePortfolio. And we've been talking more about that. And eventually we're going to have a book if we don't publish an article before too many more conversations. But I talk about how I use my social media spaces, and then I give access to my public spaces, and I'd explain why they're not all public. And then I have a tab on teaching and learning, which is sort of like what I do all the time, 24/7. And so I just divided it into spaces where there's public projects and there's examples for me, and then there's examples for my students, and then I have resources for like eventually maybe this presentation will go on there, or like just some things that stand out to me that people might want to use. I did a blog assignment project with my high school seniors a couple years ago, and so I give the assignment if you would like to use it and kind of show I do all of my assignments that I ask my students to do so I can understand how they work. And so then I have an example of my own that I share that kind of like, look, this is the finished product. And then I have private projects. And because I used PebblePad, I can put this all in one portfolio. So these links, I'm going to be able to open them here, but they're shared into a space in Atlas. And so unless I'm the only person in that workspace that I created to put these projects. And so if you're not me, then you can't access these things, but then I can access them to show if I'm at a presentation such as this. And one thing I've done is build like a team portfolio for my team. I work with 2 faculty at Reynolds High School, and this is interesting, these are all images that we have on our Facebook profiles. And I thought, isn't it interesting? It kind of shows some of our personality and the things that we value, and like why maybe we work well together because we value a lot of the same things. And then there's a gallery of student work. And then on the team page, there's also some student examples. This is going to be part of a larger portfolio that I use for the whole program to showcase what's going on in the different schools. And then, as Candice is saying, I also use it for my annual review. So this is an example of my annual review portfolio. And actually this was a promotion portfolio. So, and I did get the promotion, so yay me. I'm going up for a milestone review in the fall. So that means I will be reviewed 4 times within 12 months, which is very exciting. So I've got a lot of review experience. And then I have, this example is actually a submission space where students have been putting a reflective template that will be part of their ePortfolios. And I can show you mine. And the way that I have it structured is so they do their reflection, it creates this template, and then they use it to comment and talk to each other about what they've put up. So as a way to have community engagement and learn from each other. And then I have this super private, which I'll share anyway, inner work that I'm doing, which is just like my own space of I'm working on. I'm part of a creativity group with Candyce where we meet once a week and do art projects. And so I put all of mine in here and kind of talk about them. And then I have some other, I'm just nerding out here in my spaces. But, and I also like, on my team example where I have student work, some of my students have agreed to let me share their portfolios. And so if you, I think I'm doing something later this month where I talk about these and we could get more into the student examples, and I'm hopefully going to have some students come with me. So I guess for me, the portfolio has evolved to like, I have a, and this is to a piece I wrote for the journal in the, I guess in the winter, that I just like to build its digital archive of different resources that are reflective and show my practice, and then I can arrange them in different ways. And so I guess that speaks to the curation piece. I think that was part of the bullets too. And that I have to think about what is my purpose for creating the portfolio, and then I can have a lot of different resources to draw from. And at this point, I have so much in my digital archive that I could create a portfolio that is either personal or professional or student-centered or family-focused. I did a blog about my grandmother when she was going through her last year of life, and I did, you know, that's part of my portfolio too. And my son did a project where he interviewed her. I guess that's on here in my public spaces, where my son and I did this project where we interviewed my grandma, and then we published, or we published the conversations with her and talked about them together. And he used this for a school project, and I use it as an example of how to do a really personal portfolio that actually, I mean, my family, I don't think anybody's been able to go through it yet, but eventually we'll be at a point where we can listen and, you know, have her voice, which is pretty awesome.
Plus Sonja teaches a course on families. So this serves as a resource for that course too.
Yeah. So I think that, is there something else that I should go over, Candice?
No, I think we have time if people have some questions for Sonja right now that might help you navigate what she just said. Okay, I'll take that as a no right now.
Yeah, and I can't.
Feel free to think questions in the chat too as they come up.
Yeah,
I do have a question, actually, yeah. if that's okay. You know, in thinking about purpose, it sounds like in your context, you're really thinking of this more as a holistic portfolio, and you mentioned the word archive. So it's a space where you can keep everything together, but then represent it for different audiences in different ways. Is that sort of how I'm understanding your approach?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like this is sort of my public portfolio is my all-purpose, right? And I do link to it from my social media spaces. So there's reciprocal link between my social media and this public portfolio. And then because in my practice, I'm often giving presentations, I find that rather than doing a slideshow about a lot, like the slideshows get smaller. So I have maybe like 4 or 5 slides, and then I can just go through my portfolio and I have some, you know, information on there to demonstrate what I'm talking about. And then I just, I think I'm still discovering different ways that it's useful for me, but it's so much like the person who benefits most from my ePortfolio is me. I think. And although I don't know, because I put resources out, and so like if people use them and find them helpful, then that could be awesome too. But I think I just try to have cohesion across the digital spaces that I inhabit. And I think that's like, I use LinkedIn also, and I've been trying to be more mindful about that. But there's something about ePortfolio, the reflection piece, that is so important. And I do some reflection on Facebook, but I like to limit my audience there. And so having the public portfolio gives me a place where I can reflect on the things that are important to me, and, you know, engage in, like, being an educator is not just about being in the classroom. So I don't know if that answers your question. Yeah.
And when Sonja and I
you.
were talking about this presentation, I think one thing that is really intriguing with me about how Sonja approaches this, in many ways, you are the audience, and the purpose is for your own growth. And I think that's an incredible model for students, for them to be able to look at your ePortfolio and understand that you are learning by creating this document. And it's living. You change it all the time.
Yeah.
Because your learning's changing all the time, and things you're exposed to are changing all the time.
Yeah. And sometimes I'm learning a lot, and it's not fun, but it's instructive.
And it may be a little messy, right?
It'll be messy. It'll be messy. Yeah.
Great.
I will stop the share so you can.
Okay, great. Okay, so I will do the same thing and show you my portfolio. And it is one of my 54 portfolios, but it's my latest one. And it is focused, I decided in working with some folks that I really wanted to focus on. I have several promotion portfolios that I've done, but I really wanted the focus of this one to be for my students. So each course that I teach and on our public webpage for my program, people can go to this ePortfolio. So they can get to know me ahead of time from my classes. We require, like I said, we require an ePortfolio for our students in our master's program. One of the primary pieces of that ePortfolio is what we call our guiding principles. And through many of our courses, our students develop, they're kind of like teaching philosophies, but we're looking at post-secondary education. And many of these folks are in student affairs areas. So guiding principles is a more important, I think, a better representation of something like a teaching philosophy. So one of the things I wanted to do in this portfolio was for those particular students was to model a guiding principle, because we have many exercises that they go through to get to their guiding principles, but sometimes they fell short. And part of me doing this was making sure I understood what the process was like, right? So I could teach it better, but also give them a model for the guiding principles. So let me just walk you through a little bit of this. Again, it's very student focused. That's the idea. And I want to point out we have a best in show, and Sonja did also at our institution. We had a competition for ePortfolios, and we had them in different categories. One of them is a way to encourage students to present their work, but also for faculty to present their work. So we did really good. 2 different years, but we did really good. So I have these tabs here. I give a little bit about myself, and I have an official biography as well as something that's a little more personal. Probably one of the most fun things I had about developing this portfolio was letting people know about my education. And when I started working on it, it's one of those things where you start to learn about yourself and see connections. You know, at first I started out with, you know, where I went to school and just saying a little bit about that. But as I started to develop it, I realized, you know, I'm really talking about my schooling, and that as a first generation student, my schooling has had great influence on me, and not just where I went to school, but where I've worked. And so I've taken every institution that I've been at and written a reflection about what I learned in being in that institution, and connected, have links to those two. Even my elementary school, I've got in here. And then I have a piece here about my guiding principles. And like I said, to me, this has been a really important piece, and it's been very helpful to my students in thinking about what we're asking them to do and the kind of reflection and the depth of reflection. For as I think for Sonja, you've learned a lot about yourself, and I've learned a lot by writing these guiding principles. And then we have a teaching section, and this one actually is not as fleshed out, and partly I'm trying to figure out what I want to do in this section. Do I actually want to share my syllabi? Do I want to just list the courses? I still haven't come to that. I haven't figured that out yet. And then I've got a scholarship area, because I want students to know what I care about and what my work is. So they can get there. They can see some of the work that I've done. So that is mine. And for me, the main, it was very, very helpful for me to decide on a very specific audience. Unlike Sonja, you know, it helped me focus on what I wanted to include. And that question that we had in the slide before, about, you know, what do I want to share, and what do I want my audience to know? And so these categories represent that, you know, in terms of our purpose. So any questions for me?
So I see there's a question in the chat from Helen. She asks, regarding sharing syllabi and other content, how have you addressed their concerns about privacy, intellectual property, and those sorts of things?
And that's why I haven't shared them yet. You know, when I first did it, I thought this was going to be great, because we often get questions from students saying, I get many emails saying, can I get a copy of the syllabus ahead of time? Right. And so then I have many emails that I can answer, and I thought this would be great. I can just put it up there, but it is a public space. It's a public portfolio. And I wanted to have some control over it. So that's why I haven't done that yet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe I could just follow up on that. I think, have you and Sonja seen any concerns expressed by students around these days around like implicit bias in terms of what you share about yourself, how you represent yourself? I think we're certainly seeing more of that, particularly like with you know, including a picture on LinkedIn or not. And here you're revealing quite a bit about who you are, which makes you very real, you know, especially as instructors and faculty. and so on. But for, you know, for our students who are starting out, like what do they reveal about themselves? You know, especially let's say as a woman, you know, with kids, you know, would I necessarily put that, you know, on my public facing portfolio, not necessarily knowing who the audience is?
Right. And actually, I think that is a really, really good question, Helen, because that really speaks to the purpose and your audience.
Right.
So for me, this is not a public, like it is out there in space. If you have the address, you can find it, but it is not searchable.
Right.
You know, the platform we use, PebblePad, has the ability to make it so it's not searchable.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And so people are given the link. So I have that kind of control. So it is a link that goes to students. It is not a link and to other maybe to colleagues that I share with, but it just, you know, and I think for me, the biggest lesson in creating my own portfolios has been the importance of audience.
Right.
And what it is you want to share and what it is you want the audience to know. And those, they may sound like similar questions, but I think they're very different.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
And I would say like our syllabi are public in that we have to turn them into our unit, and like anyone that asks for them will get, I mean, like they're just available. So I guess when I included my syllabus just to the most recent class I taught because of the fact that I hyperlinked it to everything that students needed. And I wanted to show it as a teaching example of like, they can just bookmark their syllabus and they could navigate the class that way. They don't have to like log into different platforms. The links just carry them there. So I don't have like a syllabus for every course I taught. It was more of like how I did it. And then for my students, I used to just ask them for permission or they sign something, but now with PebblePad, I have them give me permission to take a copy of it. So they really have to actively engage in giving me permission to it when I'm going to use it as an example. But sometimes, I mean, I don't know that people really think about those things all the time, right? Like I know my teenage son is saying stuff on Instagram and I'm like, oh, what are you doing? Like audience, like who's going to see this later and what do you do? So like part of that, I mean, there's a certain amount of risk inherent in sharing in general. And I think also, but we need to talk to our students about digital ethics and digital citizenship and those types of things so they can make good choices. And also this is like part of the learning experience for all of us. And I mean, I don't think I think they're ongoing questions.
I liked the question about syllabi. Yes, they are public documents for us too, as Sonja said. And I do want to just admit part of it, why I don't have it linked there is because that means I have to go through all my files and link it. So it's a little bit of a laziness factor also, just to be honest.
I wanted to respond to the comment about the personal dimensions that are woven in. And I think for Candice and I, well, our program is really relationship based and our pedagogy is tied to the importance of relationship and community. And so I think that I know that I have internalized that. And so I don't know how to like not, it's just intrinsic to it. And part of like why my students share stuff with me or allow that to be shared is the relationship I built with them. And so they're just, that's a big piece of also the work that we do.
And there's a bit of a modeling, right? So that if I am open and share some vulnerability, and that I recognize that vulnerability is important for my learning, they have a model of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's your turn, and we have not a ton of time. But there is an ePortfolio worksheet that actually lays out these particular questions. And I'm thinking probably I think maybe the best way for us to go about this, because we're not going to do the breakout rooms, Why did it do that? I thought I would go to the worksheet, but it didn't go to the worksheet.
I can put the worksheet in the chat.
That'd be great.
And then people can access it.
You may have to change the sharing options for that too.
Yeah.
But maybe a way that we could go about this is just, you know, what have you reactions that you've had, and what do you think you want to do next? I really encourage you to think about doing this worksheet on your own and finding a buddy to maybe do it with you and talk about it. So questions or comments or other ideas about how we could proceed?
Can we have access to the document?
Yep, I'm working on it.
Okay.
And I think
we'll also make sure that these resources are available in the gallery for the week, as well as assuming that that's fine with you, Candice and Sonja.
Yes. Yes.
So that folks have the ability to go back. There is a question in the chat. I'm not sure if you saw it, about showing your, you know, sort of finished portfolio to your students, and whether seeing that, you know, more final product, even though I know you tell them that it's a work in progress and you're constantly updating it, but do they ever panic from seeing like, whoa, look at all the possibilities, and how do you mitigate that?
You know, really my experience has been they may feel that way, but it's also incredibly inspiring. You know, probably the best ePortfolio building activity I've ever done and continue to do is to have ePortfolio showcases, and to do it early on in the work with students. And so they start showing each other their portfolios and they think, oh my goodness, that is so cool. I want to do that. Or they're really embarrassed that it's so poor, right? So the next time I build in at least 3 times that they share portfolios with each other. So, you know, oftentimes I get questions from students who have looked at my ePortfolio when they begin to work on their ePortfolios, and they say, how did you do that picture thing? You know, how did you move this? You know, I've been trying to do it like you did it, but I can't figure out how to do that. So I've actually found that students feel like it's inspiring and a little competitive to, you know, for them to be able to do good work.
I would say also that for me, my portfolio right now only looks as good as it does because I learned from my students, because they figured out things to do that I didn't know was possible. And so then I would incorporate those things. But I also do, over time, I use templates and workbooks that they build, and then they do the finished product at the end. And so I have examples of the pieces. So I don't necessarily show them that what mine looks like in the beginning, but I will show, like now I have a bunch of different examples and student examples to show them. But I like to show them examples of pieces while they're working on it. And then there's this moment, I had a meeting with one of my former students, because several of my students from my senior class are going to take my fall sophomore class. And so they were, you know, talking to me in different ways about how to do that and what they needed to do, and also just finishing up the year. And one of my students had a meeting with me about how to put their ePortfolio together, and they were like, oh, I totally get it now. That's awesome. And also, I had a student who wrote me a card at the end of the year, and she's like, sometimes I dreaded doing the workbooks, but I was really proud of the finished product. And so I think maybe not necessarily showing the whole thing right away until they've done part of it would be a strategy I would use around that.
And in the chat, I see, Steve, you say that you have students complete an audience profile sheet for their ePortfolio. I think that's a brilliant idea. Could you talk about, are you still here? Or could you talk more about that?
Yeah, I'm still here. I have my students do an audience profile sheet where theirs is more for like a personal branding resume more than a reflection. So I have my students go through it where who is it the audience for recruiters or for whoever, and they answer what does their audience read, and they go through all these questions.
That's
But
great.
I find they focus more, and it's a much better ePortfolio in the end for that reason.
That's great. It sounds like something we should all do as we're building a professional portfolio.
But I also have them do an ePortfolio for a press release and other types of assignments as well too. So they're not only doing it for that.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, sometimes the things we do for our students are also things we could do for ourselves. So if you were willing to share that, Steve, at some point, that might be good for us to be thinking about our
I could do that.
audience profile for professional portfolios.
Yeah, I can do it. I can send I think Kevin put the link to mine in there.
Oh, it's in the, is that in your portfolio?
Oh yeah, it's in a couple places.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate that resource.
It's not a problem.
Great. And someone asked, how do I keep all my ePortfolios up to date? I don't. That's over the years. I've had 53. Yeah, I have 3 active portfolios right now. I have one that's for my students, one that is kind of a traditional, you know, what you would do if you were going for promotion or annual review. You know, it's got scholarship, it's got teaching, and that one does have a lot of my syllabi. And my teaching evaluations, things like that, my reflections on teaching. And then I have a third one that's totally my private kind of reflective. It's almost like a reflective journal, but I pull from that often to then put into these other portfolios.
Yeah. And I also found when I went up for promotion, what was really nice is I linked to all my previous years. So it was just really, like, it was nice to put it all together.
We have 5 minutes.
Can I just ask, in terms of the professional development portfolios, do you at Portland State have a rubric or something that the review committee uses to assess your work, or how does that happen in your context?
Depends on what unit you're in. Some units have very specific rubrics and some units seem to be really arbitrary.
Yeah, we have really specific guidelines in our unit, and it seems, I don't know, it doesn't seem like having them in front of us is very helpful to creating the final product. But yeah, we just have a list of things we have to include.
No, what did I do? I made some kind of edited drawing thing. Turn off the drawing.
So one of the questions in the chat is whether we could hear from the other people who didn't get to speak at the start, so that we get to hear who else is here joining this community.
Jump in. I'm trying to figure out how to make my thing go to the next slide. Sonja, do you want to call on people?
I don't know who went already.
I can help if that's
okay.
That would be helpful.
Great. Tracy,
so I don't I don't think we heard from Amira.
Hello, everyone. Good to be here. Thank you for organizing this. So my name is Amira Serafi, and I'm an English instructor at the American University in Cairo. I don't have a portfolio right now, but I used to have one back when I used to teach Arabic as a foreign language in the US. I do require my students to use an ePortfolio sort of to showcase the work over the semester, to reflect on the essays they write, so on and so forth. So yeah, that's it about me.
Thank you.
Thanks. Brandy?
I'm here. Sorry, I'm here. I'm Brandy from IUPUI. I'm the director of an internship program. We started using ePortfolios as part of the IUPUI C2L project back a long time ago. Yes, I am that old. And we use it with the interns. I also have my own because I don't want to force them to do something that I haven't also done.
Great, thanks. Deborah.
Hi there. I am from the University of Alaska Anchorage, and I'm in the math department there. And we use ePortfolios to document that our majors are achieving the student learning outcomes. We also use them for promotion and tenure, but it's optional. And it took me almost a whole hour to realize I'm currently working on an ePortfolio, talking about the pivot from face-to-face to online teaching.
Great, thanks. Bencha, did we hear from you earlier? I don't think we did.
No, hey, thanks everyone. Bancha Sakacha, the instructional technologist for Manhattanville College. I support and evangelize, I guess, ePortfolio for faculty, staff, and students. I don't teach per se, but we do work with, I work with professors on how to incorporate ePortfolio into so many things. We have an experiential a program of experiential learning courses. My colleague Kyoko Mona is one of the professors in that program. We have experiential learning, capstone, internships, tenure and promotion. I think Res Life was flirting with it for a bit for their leadership program. And also, yeah, I have, I guess, kind of like Candice, tens of ePortfolios. They're all called sample and test, however. I do have a quasi-professional one. It's just sort of a proof of concept, nothing formal. But I'm also a student in an EDD program here, and we have to do a capstone on leadership experiences. So it's the closest thing I have to a personal portfolio. But I'd like to synthesize something larger, incorporating the grad study versus my work, my education, and all that kind of stuff.
Great.
So there's a few more people we haven't heard from yet, but I want to just be mindful of the time, and I'll turn it back over to Candice and Sonja for our next steps.
Okay. And maybe for the folks that didn't get a chance to share, if you would add it to the chat, we can incorporate, we can all learn about where people are from and what they're doing. Okay, now I have to, why can't it, well, the last slide, I'm clicking and I'm not getting anywhere. The last slide just is to say thank you to all of you, but to also highlight for you an opportunity that we at AAEEBL would like to extend to our members. And that is a program that we've done a couple of times called Out of Practice. And we have gotten together a group of folks that, oh, there. You're going to add it, huh? Are you working on that, Sonja? Thank you. We are going to add that, so look for this. And we met, it was a year-long project, and we met several times during that space. And we shared with each other our ePortfolios. We gave each other feedback on our ePortfolios. A big piece of that was defining who your audience was. And the last Out of Practice session that we did was actually when I did this student-focused ePortfolio. Really, really helpful for me, and also just great to meet other colleagues across the world that were working on their ePortfolios. There was an AEPR, the AAEEBL ePortfolio review. There was an article that our Out of Practice group did. So I'll make sure that gets in the gallery. So if you want to read about, I think there were 6 of us that were in that article. If you want to read about our experience in being in Out of Practice, you can do that from this article. And Sonja has graciously agreed to work with me to do Out of Practice in this coming year. So I hope that all of you will think about joining us in the coming year.
And I should just let you know that Helen Chen is our Director of Memberships, and so she's going to be sending out information about all the various member benefits that you can expect to experience if you decide to become a member. Helen, do you want to say anything more about that?
Yeah, no, we have some really exciting things planned. I know many of you are perhaps maybe new to AAEEBL, and so certainly hoping that you'll be able to take advantage of the month's activities to really learn more about our organization as well as our community. And then, yeah, we'll be following up with some additional information about how to join AAEEBL and also benefits such as out of practice specifically for AAEEBL members. I did want to make a quick announcement that I've been in the process of setting up a Slack workspace for the month, you know, to allow everyone to have sort of those like back channel conversations, you know, the sort of like the hallway conversations we normally would have had we been in person. So please expect an email about that pretty soon with the invitation to join if you would like our Slack workspace, just to have another way of communicating with folks in between sessions and throughout the month.
Thanks, Helen. And I just want to, thank so much Candice and Sonja for sharing these great examples with us and hopefully getting us to think about how we cannot become out of practice. I hope you found today's session useful. Just a quick note to let you know that we are recording all of the sessions and we're keeping track of the chat transcripts and things. So we'll be sure to share that out. You can always find the recordings eventually on the page for each week. So where you click to register for sessions, we'll have the links for you to go ahead and rewatch things if you choose to do so. If you miss something, you can check it out. And as always, if there's something you're wishing that we were doing, or you're looking for particular resources, please reach out to us. We are here for you, and we want to make this as useful as possible for you, as I'm sure, like the rest of us, are planning for what you're going to do next in the fall. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and we look forward to seeing you online in one of these various formats.
Thanks, everyone.
And I just put the worksheet in again, just in case anyone had trouble with it, into the chat.
Great, thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Enjoy your weekend.